The forest was alive with sound, yet strangely silent at its core. Leaves rustled high above as the late afternoon breeze swept gently through the branches, and the distant call of a bird echoed, breaking the stillness. Shafts of golden light poured through the canopy, scattering across the ground in fractured patterns. Every step crunched softly underfoot, damp earth mixing with patches of grass and roots that seemed to rise from the soil like hidden traps. A young woman emerged from the thicket, her figure steady and determined. She wore a simple black tank top and shorts, her skin glistening faintly with sweat from the long walk. A green backpack rested against her shoulders, straps pulled tight, bouncing lightly with each step. Her long brown hair, caught by the wind, brushed across her face, but she didn't mind. Her eyes were focused, scanning the surroundings with a mix of caution and wonder. At her side, a golden retriever patted happily, tongue hanging loose as he trotted through the greenery. His fur shimmered in the warm sunlight, catching glimmers of gold with every movement. Every so often, he paused to sniff at a patch of wild plants or dig his nose into the damp ground before bounding back toward her, as if to remind her he was still there. Loyal, alert, and content, he was her constant companion in this quiet adventure. Then, as the trees parted, she saw it. Half hidden in the forest's embrace stood an old school bus, its form ghostly and out of place among the wilderness. Its paint, once bright yellow, had long since faded into shades of dull green and rust, streaked with brown where the rain had carved its path. The metal surface was scarred with age, peeling like dry skin, while vines and weeds crawled up along the wheels, claiming it as part of the forest floor. The windows were clouded and broken in places, jagged shards still clinging to the frames. One side mirror hung loosely, tilting downward as if it had given up the fight years ago. The front grille, once proud, was bent and chipped, though the word corral still clung faintly across the metal plate. Above the windshield, the faint letters of school bus could barely be read, ghostly in their faded outline. The woman stopped in her tracks, her chest rising and falling as she took in the sight. Her expression shifted, no longer just cautious, but thoughtful, almost reverent. She tilted her head slightly, her gaze lingering on the bus as though it were something sacred. Her golden retriever sat down beside her, panting happily, unaware of the gravity of the moment. Sunlight spilled across the clearing, bathing the bus in warm, golden hues. Dust motes floated lazily in the air, drifting in the shafts of light that pierced through the trees. The contrast was striking, the decay of man's creation standing stubbornly against the wild beauty of nature. She stepped forward slowly, her boots pressing into the moss-covered earth. Her fingers flexed against the straps of her backpack as she drew closer, almost as if she feared the bus might vanish if she moved too fast. Her eyes softened, curiosity mixing with unease. The forest seemed to hold its breath around her. The air grew heavier as she reached for the bus door. A thick silence hung in the clearing, broken only by the faint panting of her golden retriever. Her hand hovered for a moment above the rusted handle, her pulse quickening. The forest behind her seemed safe, warm in the afternoon light, but inside the bus waited shadows, untouched for decades. With a sharp breath, she pushed. The door creaked loudly, resisting at first before giving way with a groan that echoed unnaturally in the quiet woods. A stale, musty smell drifted out, the scent of rust, mold, and forgotten years. Her retriever whined softly but followed, nails clicking against the metal step as they entered. Inside, the air was dim and thick. Dust particles floated in the faint beams of light that squeezed through the cracked windows. Every corner was draped in neglect. Torn seat covers sagged open, foam spilling out in jagged chunks. The floor was littered with scraps of paper, old notebooks, and faded wrappers, all discolored with age. She raised her flashlight and flicked it on. The beam cut through the gloom, illuminating the aisle like a narrow tunnel into the past. Each row of seats seemed to hold stories long gone, little lives frozen in the wreckage of time. She crouched to pick up a notebook half buried beneath debris. Its cover was soft with rot, the name scribbled faintly in childish handwriting, Emily, 3rd grade. Her throat tightened. She flipped it open. The first page was filled with cheerful doodles, flowers, sunshine, smiling stick figures. But as she turned deeper into the book, the drawings grew frantic. Dark lines crossed over the pages, and shaky letters spelled broken phrases. It's getting dark, the driver says wait, I'm scared. Her fingers trembled. The flashlight beam wavered across the seats. The golden retriever growled low, ears pressed back. He stood stiff, his gaze fixed toward the rear of the bus. She froze, heart thundering, and followed his stare. The shadows at the far end seemed thicker, as though they moved with a weight of their own. She swallowed hard and forced herself to step deeper inside. Her boots crunched on shattered glass. The sound echoed far too loudly, bouncing back at her like a whisper. She glanced toward the windows, their broken edges jagged like teeth, as if the bus itself was holding something captive. Her flashlight beam caught on a drawing pinned to one seat with a rusted paperclip. It showed a school bus, almost identical to the one she stood in. Surrounding it were stick-figure children, all smiling. But above them loomed black shapes, crude and menacing, drawn in thick strokes. Her retriever barked suddenly, sharp and urgent. The sound jolted her heart, and she spun around, the flashlight sweeping wildly across the bus interior. For a moment she swore she saw movement, a shadow slipping between the seats. "Hello," she called, voice cracking. Her words were swallowed by silence. Only the dripping sound of water somewhere in the bus answered her. She forced herself to breathe, her hand gripping the strap of her backpack like a lifeline. She had come here searching for answers, and though fear gnawed at her edges, curiosity held her in place. She knew she couldn't turn back now. The forest outside had grown quieter, the light dimmer. The bus seemed to close around her, a capsule of the past unwilling to let go of its secrets. Her retriever whined again, pressing against her leg. She steadied the flashlight, determination flashing in her eyes. Whatever had happened here, she was about to find out. In that moment, the scene was both haunting and cinematic. A young woman, her loyal dog, and a relic of the past, hidden deep within the embrace of the woods. It was the kind of moment where adventure begins, where stories unravel, and where forgotten truths wait patiently to be discovered. The woman stepped out of the bus, her chest rising and falling faster than before. The air outside felt fresher, but it didn't calm the weight pressing down on her shoulders. She clutched the photograph she had just found, her fingers curling tightly around its edges as though it were a lifeline. The picture was faded, corners curled and stained with time. It showed children, a class photo, perhaps, their faces smiling but strangely hollow in the way only old photos can be. Yet one face among them froze her in place. A boy. His eyes, though blurred by age, seemed familiar. Too familiar. Her retriever let out a low growl, the fur on his neck bristling. His gaze was locked on the tree line, body stiff as stone. The woman followed his stare, heart pounding in her throat. The forest that had felt alive and warm only moments ago now seemed alien, its colors muted, its shadows stretching unnaturally long. The sunlight that filtered through the canopy was different now, sharper, colder, as though the day itself had shifted. A mist crept between the trunks, thin at first but thickening with each passing second. She blinked, squinting into the haze, and then she saw them. Figures. At first they looked like tricks of the light, shapes woven from fog. But then, as her eyes adjusted, they sharpened. Dozens of small figures, pale and still, stood among the trees. Their bodies were faint, translucent even, but their faces were unmistakable. Children. They didn't move. They didn't speak. They simply stood, lined in silence, watching her. The retriever barked suddenly, loud and fierce, breaking the silence like shattering glass. The sound echoed through the forest, but the figures didn't flinch. They remained motionless, their dark eyes fixed only on her. Her breathing grew shallow. She stepped back instinctively, clutching the photo tighter, as if it could protect her. "No," she whispered under her breath, shaking her head. This couldn't be real. She blinked again, half expecting the mist to clear and reveal nothing but trees. But they were still there. One figure shifted. Slowly, unnaturally, it stepped forward. A boy, smaller than the rest, emerged from the line of children. His face was pale, his clothes torn and worn like they had been buried for years. Yet his eyes, they pierced her. Eyes that seemed to know her. Her retriever pressed closer, teeth bared, but the boy did not come closer. Instead, his lips parted. His voice was soft, almost fragile, yet it carried clearly across the mist. "Claire." The sound froze her. She staggered backward, her name echoing in her ears. It wasn't just the word that shook her, it was the voice. Low, strained, but achingly familiar. The same voice she had heard in stories told by her grandfather when she was a child. Her grip loosened, the photograph slipping slightly from her trembling fingers. She stared, unblinking, at the figure of the boy. The forest around her seemed to fade. The trees loomed taller, the mist thicker, the air colder. Time itself felt suspended, caught between past and present. The children didn't move. Only the boy's eyes held hers, unyielding, as if urging her to remember something buried deep within her bloodline. Her retriever whined softly now, no longer growling, as though even he understood that what stood before them was not meant to be chased away. The woman's lips parted, her voice breaking into the silence, "Grandpa." And for the first time, one of the ghostly children smiled. The moment the boy's ghostly smile flickered through the mist, something inside Claire broke. Her chest tightened, and her instinct screamed louder than her curiosity ever could. She stumbled backward, clutching the photograph to her chest, the edges digging into her skin as though trying to anchor her in reality. The retriever barked again, frantic this time, tugging at her shorts with his teeth, urging her away. His growl vibrated deep in his chest, but beneath it was panic. He wanted her to run. Claire's gaze flicked back to the line of children. They had begun to shift now. No longer statues, their pale forms swayed and drifted between the trees, silent but purposeful. Their dark eyes never left her. Dozens of them, spreading wider, as if to surround her. And the bus both. Her breath came ragged. No, 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 no. She spun on her heel and bolted. Her boots pounded against the earth, the forest erupting into a blur of green and shadow around her. Branches clawed at her arms, scratching her skin as she tore through the underbrush. The retriever raced beside her, his fur flashing gold in the dim light, his breath loud and desperate. Behind her, faint but chilling, came the sound. Laughter. Childish, high-pitched giggles echoing unnaturally through the trees. It wasn't joyful laughter, but hollow, a sound that didn't belong in the living world. It followed her, bounced from trunk to trunk, as though the forest itself was alive with it. Claire's legs burned, but fear kept her moving. She didn't dare look back, but she could feel them. The children were following, their presence heavy, pressing against her back like cold hands reaching for her. The photograph crumpled in her grip as she clutched it tighter. She stumbled once, catching herself against a tree, her lungs screaming for air. The retriever barked at her, sharp and urgent, and she pushed off again, forcing her legs to move. Through the trees, she caught a glimpse of light, the thinning edge of the forest. Hope surged inside her, but it was fragile, desperate. She pushed harder, her feet barely touching the ground as she sprinted toward it. The laughter grew louder, closer, circling her now. A chill swept across her spine as she heard whispers threading through the giggles, words she couldn't understand, but that filled her with dread. The retriever barked furiously, snapping at something behind them, and Claire risked a glance over her shoulder. For a split second, she saw them. Dozens of pale faces rushing through the mist, eyes glowing faintly, mouths twisted into unnatural smiles. They moved without sound, their feet never touching the earth. Her heart lurched, and she screamed, forcing herself forward with everything she had. At last, she burst through the tree line. The forest gave way to an open stretch of land, bathed in the fading orange glow of the setting sun. She stumbled into the clearing, collapsing to her knees as her dog pressed against her side, panting heavily. Her chest heaved, every breath ragged. She turned back toward the trees. The mist hung just inside the forest's edge, thick and impenetrable. The ghostly figures stopped there, watching her from the shadows, their eyes burning softly in the dark. The laughter faded, replaced by silence. Claire collapsed fully onto the grass, her body trembling, the photograph still clutched in her hand. She dared a final look at it. Her grandfather's young face stared back, blurred but unmistakable. He had been there. He had survived. But the others had not. And they were still waiting. The retriever licked her hand, grounding her back into the present. Claire stared at the tree line, her heart slowing but never settling. She knew this wasn't the end. The bus was still there. The children were still there. And someday, she would have to return.